Okay, and it is. All right. So I can probably do this one. So transfers are increasing. Is anybody surprised with that? Anybody? Mike Burns, you were surprised with that? Not at all. Okay, so as you can see, I just want to point out the 2018 number is projected, but it's projected to again be pretty significant growth over last year. The second bullet there, need-based transfers are driving M&A transfers. That is true because a lot of people come in and they want to do a needs-based transfer, an 8.3 or an 8.4, and gee, they don't vet. They haven't talked to ARIN in 20 years, and they're not vetted. They don't vet. They're not registered any longer, and we have to tell them, well, first we have to get this into an organization that vets and can actually transfer it. So that's where the M&A comes in, and we have to do an 8.2 with them, and it comes into a long process. So that's kind of a tip for 8.3 transfers for people, especially legacy holders. If you're planning to do a transfer, it's very smart to get that 8.2 done and make sure that you have your resources in a organization that vets, so it won't take as long. Those 8.2s can take months to get all the proper documentation that is required, asset purchase agreements, bankruptcy papers. There's lots and lots of documentation that is required to get those 8.2s approved. And again, there's no signs of it slowing down, which good news for some of you people out there, right, Mike?
Yeah, John, if I could say one thing. The reason that an 8.2 transfer takes so long is because an 8.2 transfer is either a wonderful thing that we're getting good documentation on, or an attempted hijack of your address space that we're sparing you from. So it is a little bit of a work, but it's to prevent someone from coming in and saying they have the rights to your resource and taking it. And so just appreciate the fact that we do a lot of diligence there because we don't want someone to lose their rights to their number of resources through really creative social engineering.
Yeah, and my folks in RSD are getting very, very good at this. So, okay, specified recipient volume. What the heck am I talking about there? Okay, so this just shows that the increase in the number of transfers is not directly related to the number of IP addresses transferred. As you saw in that previous one, there was more transfers. What? This is okay, hold on. I got to remember what this is. Seems like it's out of order. There's more transfers. There's a larger number of transfers that's going to be completed this year, but there was more actual addresses transferred last year. So it's showing that there's some of the smaller players are getting into the transfer market. There's more that's going to come in this slide deck to show you that. And there it is. As you can see, there's a lot of /16 is kind of like the bellwether there, but if you go to the left, yeah, your left, there's a lot more number of transfers over there with the smaller blocks, but those larger blocks have a lot more IPs in them, so they can skew the difference between the number of addresses and the actual number of transfers. Did you want to say something, John? No? Good. Okay, inter-RIR transfer volume. Going out from ARIN, 14.8 million, or 14.8 million, and into ARIN, 500,000. There's about 30 times more space being transferred out of ARIN than into ARIN. The expectation is this is going to continue since ARIN has the majority of the legacy space. The breakdown on the prefix breakdown on the inter-RIRs, As you can see, there's still more of the smaller ones, but 16 again is the sweet spot for the transfer, and that's because most of those are legacy blocks, and most of them are your Class B networks from the olden days. 98% of them are /16 or smaller, though. So current ARIN inventory. The bulk of transfers are legacy space. Today, we have the equivalent of 41.7/8 of legacy space in our inventory. In our ISPs, we have an equivalent of 44.7, and end users 13.3, reserved held 0.35. About half of that legacy space is DoD space, and it's considered to be under contract. So that leaves about 20, the equivalent of 20/8s available to ARIN, AP, NIC, and RIPE customers through inter-RIR transfers. So remember, I gave this presentation last week to LACNIC, and that was one of the points that we just wanted to point out to that community, is that we have this large inventory of legacy addresses that are let me not use that word, that are available for the transfer market, but they're only available today to 3 of the RIRs, and that's ARIN, RIPE, and AP NIC. There was a question asked at the end of the panel that I was on last week, is if the panel felt that the small number, I think LACNIC has had 20 transfers in 2 years, and then the question was, do you think the small number of transfers is due to no inter-RIR policy? And of course, the simple answer is, yeah, you don't have any unused space in a region, you're not going to have a whole lot of people doing transfers because everybody's using their space. So in summary, number of transfers are growing every year. The total volume is about 2.5/8s a year. Lee's queuing up before I even get to the last summary point, but that's good. I like that. ARIN is losing space overall due to the inter-RIR transfers, but we're actually gaining in our non-legacy space. Was that slide in there? I don't remember seeing that slide. We have a slide that actually shows that, we've lost about 7 million of legacy space, but we've actually gained like 3 million of space that's under contract.
I do not know where that slide is, but it's in one of the decks I've reviewed for this meeting.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry about that. But so the whole thing is, we're actually overall inventory. We're losing inventory through the intra-RIR transfers mostly, but under contract, we've actually gained quite a bit. So the legacy space is slowly getting moved under contract and cleaned up and updated in the database. ARIN has a lot of legacy space. That's a brand new idea nobody ever knew. And today that space is available to ARIN, AP, NIC, and RIPE through the inter-RIRs.
Okay.
Lee?
Thank you. Lee Howard, Batavia. Actually, 2 questions. Can you go back 1 slide? When you say ARIN has a lot of legacy space, do you mean the ARIN region?
Yes.
That's what I thought. Can you go back 1 more slide, please? On this one, when you say half the legacy space is US DoD space considered to be under contract, do you simply mean locked up and not available for transfer, or do you mean it's under contract, like somebody has contracted to do something with it?
I'm going to let John
So actually, that's probably, it's known to be held by a U.S. government entity. That doesn't necessarily mean it's not available.
Right.
It just means we happen to know it's in use within the U.S. government as opposed to a private enterprise.
Okay, thank you. That does help clarify. And one more thing on this one. So 20/8s are, 20/8s are legacy address space that would theoretically be potentially available for transfer. Have you compared what volume of space among those 20/8s has been transferred? I think we could sort of infer it from some of the previous slides, but.
This is what's left.
Oh, this is
today.
what remains, okay.
This is remaining, yeah.
Okay, thank
this
you.
is- Andrew.
Andrew Dahl, ARIN AC. I don't really like the word inventory here. It implies that it's available, and I believe that probably a lot of that is actively in use by various entities. So perhaps we find a better word.
Administration is what you're, it's what's being administered in the ARIN region,
Yeah.
yes.
Would ARIN region inventory?
It's not inventory. Inventory implies that it's available to be used, right? It's sitting on a shelf.
So, John,
Okay.
the term inventory certainly, no one would expect their number of resources to show up as ARIN inventory, right? Because it's their number of resource rights. Got it.
I think because it was
Acknowledged.
done by our inventory manager. Okay, thank you, Andrew. Kathy?
Oh, I didn't know if there was anybody back there. Kathy Aronson, maybe this isn't the right time for this question, but how does all this in and out affect like the ARIN's bottom line, like the revenue? Are you positive, negative?
We're good there. Something we do track. One of the things that John noted, and I know we have in the presentation, I just think it's coming up, is we actually have, what's happening is because the legacy number of resources that aren't under any contract are dropping. The total number of IPv4 resources that were not, the /24 is equivalent, that were not under contract, used to be 56 or 57% in the region. I mean, it used to be 100% the day we were formed, but for the last 10 years, it's been in the 50s, the legacy Recently, that's been dropping radically. It's now down to 42 or 43%. All of those resources have come under contract or transferred out. So when you count what's, as John said, what's coming into the region under contract but not transferring, we're actually ending up with net member adds and net more customer under resources.
Yeah, so while it is revenue generating, it might not generate more revenue because it depends on who it goes to and whether it takes them to another tier or not.
Owen?
Owen DeLong, Sale Internet, ARIN AC. I think it's very hand-wavy to assume that the half of the legacy resources that you don't know for sure are in use are available for purchase, or whatever statement you're making about that seems to imply available for transfer or purchase. I would be willing to bet that the actual number is significantly less than that, and that, for example, HP doesn't plan on selling their addresses anytime soon, and so that subtracts 1 from that 20 right there, if not 2.
Right, it would probably be best to refer to the fact that we know a subset of it, you can see in the registry, is assigned to the U.S. government and is probably somewhat less available. But even that doesn't mean not available necessarily.
True. But more importantly, I think even less than the 20 are truly available.
Go ahead.
Chris?
Final speaker?
Chris Woodfield, Salesforce ARIN AC. You mentioned the need to vet RSA applications for fraudulent activity. I'm curious if you have anything to say about how common that is, or have you noticed any trends in volume or sophistication of the attempts to hijack space that you catch? Either of which would be, I would expect, would be a drain on ARIN staff resources.
I'm not sure, you started out talking about RSA?
I mean, you talked about the need to
Just
vet
okay, somebody just coming in
and claiming ownership of resources.
and claiming ownership, yeah.
So, to be clear, we do that when the first time someone is going to take legacy resources and put them under agreement, there's a vetting process because we have no relationship with them. So it's not really it's not really activity with regard to number of resources under contract. It's people who have had no relation with ARIN coming in and saying, this legacy resource, I need to prove myself to ARIN the first time to show I'm the rights holder. With the increase in transfers is an increase in the need for people to get their resources appropriately vetted under an organization so they can submit a transfer. Which means there's an increase in the number of people who are trying to do that for resources that they have no valid claim on. Now, sometimes these people coming in actually truly believe they have a claim to the number of resources. If you were the sysadmin of a company and you got it at /24 and it ran for 2 years and it went out of business and you're still using the address in your home because you've decided to do that, you may think, well, I requested it, it's my number block. But quite frankly, that organization that went out of business with a creditor and bills, they actually have the right to it. So when you say fraudulent, we sometimes have people come in and say, it was my name, it's obviously my number, and no, it's the organization you implied on the behalf of. In terms of actual fraud, people attempting to come in, I don't know, that would be attempts to vet that fail. And what would that be, John? Many? Increasing?
It's not a large percentage, right, but it is the largest percentage of our time.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yes. That
The
does
ones,
make
the
sense.
tough, yeah. The ones that are coming in trying to get something through that's not true, it takes the most time for us to vet out, and
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks,
takes
Chris.
a lot of
And
resources.
microphones are closed, but we have a remote participant. Go ahead.
It's a comment from Anthony De La Cruz. He says, thank you, staff. This year I've worked many 8.2s, and you've been very helpful, responsive, and friendly.
Well, thank you for that comment. On that wonderful comment, not staged, whoever you are, we will now break for lunch. Let's have a round of applause for